Every decoy tells a story. And it's us who writes each chapter of that decoy story. And so you get to look at this piece and it writes an entire novel. And you make up and imagine the stories that were made over this decoy. And how many sons to grandsons to great-grandsons to great-granddaughters did this decoy pass hands to in continuing that sporting tradition. So that's why I'm a decoy guy. My name is Brad Sanders. I'm the co-founder of Decoy Apparel Co., the artist formerly known as Dixie Decoys. That's me. I actually didn't grow up duck hunting. I grew up in Indiana chasing mostly small game, rabbits and squirrels, and then we deer hunted and stuff. But waterfowl hunting was for the rich folks, and we couldn't afford that gear. So, you know, I'm not like seventh generation, all sorts of family history and whatever. The Marine Corps brought me out here to New Bern, North Carolina, and we live not too far from the river. Every day, just waking up and going out to my truck, heading to work, I'd hear the guys banging out on the river, and I was just like, man, what's this duck hunting thing about? So, you know, just started researching things on the old interwebs and watching the YouTubes and all that stuff. I am self-taught, right, wrong, indifferent. I learned the etiquette myself. I learned decoys and whatever. I got hooked on the drug, as they say, pretty quickly. I loved the social aspect of it. I loved the action, kind of the freedom. It was just a different dynamic of hunting than what I had grown up doing, deer hunting and such. I just started to dig, you know, get deeper and deeper into it. So much of waterfowl hunting, probably more so than any other outdoor pursuit, is about the gear. Like it's not just about the pursuit of the animal. It's about like acquiring and using the tools that one uses for that pursuit. And so you start to learn about decoys and rigging and duck calls and things like that. And you always want more decoys, but I was cheap, and I was like, man, seems like a lot of money to be spending on some plastic ducks. And I have always just been more of a DIY kind of dude. And so I did some research on how to make your own foam decoys. And so the first decoys I ever made were made out of pink foam insulation boards, stuff that like goes behind siding. They looked horrible. They still look horrible. They look like a second grader's art project, and I'm massively proud of them because they were the first things that, you know, decoys that I made and kind of what started this whole thing. But then after that, I learned about molding decoys out of polyurethane foam. I started getting into that and using a common aluminum mold that many other hobbyists were using, finishing those, and I've just found a bit of a following through that on Facebook and sold a few, and start to get the idea of like, wow, I guess, you know, people like these things. Maybe I can like do this as a side gig. So I had the idea that, all right, let's try to like do this as a thing, but I didn't want to make my decoys the same as everybody else using that sort of common hobbyist mold. So I found a carver named Keith Hendrickson out of Locust, North Carolina. He has a particular style that is heavily influenced by the iconic carvers of North Carolina and Virginia's storied decoy history. And he carved these contemporary antiques that kind of, you know, scratched my itch for nostalgia. And so the whole concept of a modern foam decoy that looked like, not like a duck, so the concept of making a decoy not to look like a duck, but to look like an old decoy was born, and we turned that into our slogan, a new kind of old. So all the classic style you want with all the modern technology you demand. And so Dixie Decoys started in 2017 by us making foam decoys, selling blank decoys that you could paint yourself. And that was very important to me as how I started making decoys myself. And it was just such a cool thing to be able to watch birds pitch into something that you made, you know? Imagine if you made your own duck call, having them talk back to you and having them commit into something that you produced. It's kind of a different level of being involved in the hunt like that.
White privateer.
Yeah. Around when I started hunting, I got in contact with a guy who was a supporter of ours before we even existed as a thing. You start to hunt together, and him and his friends and his fellow hunt camp members, they all had privateers. Being out on the big water in eastern North Carolina with these guys, hunting in the conditions that we hunted in, it was really remarkable to experience the feeling of like everything's okay, that you're in this battleship of a boat, right? That, oh, by the way, is not new. It's been restored a couple times, but it's been on the water its entire life, and it's not going anywhere. There's a steadfastness in that boat, and it was a privateer. So when it came time for me to build my own duck hunting rig and my own family rig, it had to be a privateer. So I followed the path that so many others follow, and I found one that needed to be restored and went about the work of tearing it out and all the way down and rebuilding it. And what you have now is you have like this classic hot rod. Nobody could tell that it's like a brand new high-end boat, but it just looks like a working crab boat. But everything about it is modern with the classic aesthetic that you get from a privateer. And now I get to enjoy, just like the decoys, every shot hole, every little paint chip, every ding and dent on a decoy adds to that decoy story. It's like now I'm writing the next chapter of this privateer story until I pass it to the next person, right? What I love about privateer and the privateer legacy is the entire idea of privateer construction is a multi-generational boat. We say that a decoy's lifespan should last generations, not seasons. And that's very fitting when I have our decoys inside of a privateer. This boat carrying these decoys, it's not fast fashion, it's not cheap gear. It's like we are investing something that can be passed down for generations and something that is contributing to the cultural legacy of eastern North Carolina through these decoys, through privateer boats. And we're doing our part to preserve a very important part of this regional microculture in eastern North Carolina. Yeah. That's why privateer. Well, I disagree with the premise of the question. I am not artistic. I'm not particularly talented. I'm not a carver. I make no illusions. There are people that deserve recognition for being very talented carvers. I am not one of them. I'm not a carver. I am a moderately okay, maybe 3rd or 4th grade level painter. I am supported by some really talented folks that work here in the shop. I've just been able to figure out a technique that is easily replicable and easily teachable. But because our decoys aren't meant to look like ducks, they're meant to look like old decoys. The particular style of decoys that we are bringing back to life use what's called block style painting, and that is very simple lines. You won't see feather-like detail. You won't see fading. It's big, bold, primary colors, exaggerated speculums on the wings. Rarely will you see eyes. We don't paint eyes on the decoys. Some traditional decoys had painted eyes or stamped eyes. To the folks who carved these in the era that we are replicating, these were tools of necessity, and they didn't have time nor did they care to paint eyes, right? The whole premise being like, if you're painting eyes on the decoy, like if the ducks are so close that they can see the eyes, you should be shooting the ducks, right? For us, it's kind of honoring that philosophy, traditional way of thinking. And what you find is a lot of decoy, quote unquote, technology or know-how is for the hunter and not the duck. And the duck cares remarkably little about how your decoy looks or what it does or how it's painted. I do enjoy this as a creative outlet. Coming in here and painting and just being quiet is very cathartic. I get to focus a lot on running the business while this is where a lot of my creativity for the business comes, in the quiet of painting decoys, because I'm just focused on this and I can turn my mind off and filter out other things. That would be the creativity in the decoys, but I'm not particularly talented at doing this. Like I said, we have some really cool people that are talented, and they help us out. So, yeah.